Welcome to Field Talk, a Monitor Farm Scotland podcast. Join our host, Wallace Curry, as he explores the stories from Monitor Farm networks on how farmers have adapted their businesses, with support from specialists and experts, to assess farm performance and explore opportunities. Monitor Farm Scotland is farmer-led, farmer-driven, encouraging discussion and solution-based thinking.
Welcome back, everyone, to Field Talk, the Monitor Farm Scotland podcast. This series, as I'm sure if you're following, you know by now, but I'm going to give you a little heads up at the start. Anyway, in the first series, we focused on all the Monitor farmers for this period of 4 years. And then now with this series, what we're doing is with every Monitor farm comes a management group. We're sort of looking at all of those management groups, what that entails. Maybe you're in the local area and that's something down the line in a future Monitor farm group or currently, if possible, you would like to get involved in. The theme for today is looking back to move forward, lessons from a previous Monitor farmer who's now involved in the management group as well. We'll have a look at that as we go. Quite an exciting concept. You know, we've spent a year now, if not more, well, more than now, covering all that the Monitor farm entails and associated things with it as well. And the sort of concept of transitioning through time is always there. And we're going to, with today's guest, look back to what the Monitor farm programme looked like about 8 years ago. I think they begun, but we'll get into that. And then how it looks like now. Has there been challenges there? Is there changes? Is it all positive? What's that involved? But before we get into that, the guest today is Andrew Marchant. Andrew, how are you?
Good, thanks, Wallace. Thanks for having us along. Yeah, no, we're grand, and all good.
Andrew, for those listening, I'm sure a lot of people listening in to this podcast that have an interest in the Monitor farm, that have an interest in QMS as a whole, and much more, will have came across yourself and Aileen. But just for those that haven't, could you give us a wee bit of background as to who you are and a bit of a story about the farm as well?
Okay, yeah. So, I farm in partnership with my wife, Aileen. We farm at Clonhie Farm, which is we're tenants of Buccleuch Estates in Thornhill near Dumfries. We've been going here for about 13 years now. So many moons ago, we were new entrants, and we were lucky we got a chance to come to Clonhie in 2012. We're a upland beef and sheep farm. Been through a lot of changes over the years. I don't think we've actually had 2 years the same since we started, which sounds a bit mad. But we were a Monitor farm in 2017 to 2020. I think they wrapped up sort of just before COVID kicked off. We just managed to squeeze our last meeting in. So it seems a bit of a distant memory already, to be fair. It was a really good experience for us and left quite a legacy on the farm and on our business as a whole, I would say. That's sort of where we are and what we're up to.
Upland beef and sheep farm. What sort of stock are you running? What's the target market?
So we started off. We were nearly all sheep. Went through various breeds of sheep over the years, and during the Monitor farm programme, we sort of we changed the system a bit. We closed our flock and started buying in some recorded genetics, and we've got a mainly Aberfield cross flock, which we're transitioning into a wool shedding flock at the moment. So they are lambed outside, wintered outside. Most of the lambs fattened and the remainder sold store. We've also got a herd of suckler cows. They are also outwintered, so they are Lings and Anguses mainly. Outside all year round, calved outside. But wean the calves and they're all wintered in the sheds on TMRs. Cows are wintered on the hill for the start of the winter and then on the forage crops. Then we also have some dairy beef store cattle. It was something we started during the Monitor farm as well. Sort of buying in calves and selling them as forward stores. And we had a bit of a brief spell as a deer farm as well. So we've been up to quite a bit over the last few years. And the other thing we do is we do a bit of contract farming. So we contract farm a local estate farm. So quite a lot happening, and yeah, it's started off being quite a simple system, but got relative a bit complicated over the years. To be fair.
Tell us about deer. What was the how did that go? Is that still happening? It's a challenge to set up, my understanding, fencing wise and whatnot.
Yeah, it was. It was during the Monitor Farm. We were looking for ways to diversify the business a bit. I mean, it's probably calmed down a wee bit, but at that stage, the diversification was a real buzzword, and everyone was pushing you to, we should all be diversifying. It's quite difficult for us being a tenanted farm. I also didn't really like the narrative that all farmers should be diversifying. I think if it suits your business and it's something you can do and add value, that's great. But we'd spent years busting our gut to start farming, so that was what our passion was and what we wanted to do. So we diversified a wee bit with sort of some different enterprises within the business, but that was as far as we went. So yeah, we did. We had a spell of deer farming. We've actually recently just sold the last of our deer for the moment. But yeah, various reasons. Various reasons we've come out of the deer at the moment, but certainly don't regret it. We had, yeah, it was a good experience and did quite well for a number of years there. But yeah, we're looking to simplify our business a wee bit, and yeah, deer farming was just had a sticky couple of years, to be fair.
You know, I am I'm with you on your comments about diversification. It's a shame that a sector like agriculture, so important to everyone, is in a position that, financially the narrative is we need to diversify. It's yeah, it's another discussion for another day in light of the profitability, whatever it was that came out today at a political level. All of that stuff's a different discussion for another day, but I'm totally with you on that one. Totally with you. One thing's that's about you said there, Andrew, that's interesting is the tenancy side. You know, you and Aileen are changing always. You said there's never been a year that you're the same one year that you were the one previous. How does that work in a tenancy? Do you have a good relationship with Buccleuch? How does that work? And how also, because there'll be a lot of people interested in this part, how does getting in originally, in 2012, what does that process look like?
Yeah, so we're very fortunate. We've got a great relationship with our landlord. Um, so to go back before that, I'd done a degree in agriculture and I was working as a farm manager. Neither or I came from a family farm, but I always had a real passion to start my own business. So we were, like a lot of people, looking the length and breadth of the country for farms to rent, and eventually came upon Clonhie in 2012. We were, yeah, really lucky to get this tenancy at that stage. Yeah, it just gave us a real base to start from, and we've been lucky since then. We've had a lot of support from the estate. We've been able to grow the farm quite a lot. Um, it's the usual chicken and egg thing at the start when you're trying to start a business. You need a farm, but you also need finance, and one's no good without the other. So finance was really tricky at the time. Eventually, we were lucky. We got a good bank to back us and gave us a start, and we managed to sort of kick on from there. But I certainly think it's disappointing in a lot of ways that we've been told for years that all this land would become available, and the age of farmers is getting so high. We need, but I think if anything, it's harder now to rent a farm than it was then, and it's a real shame. But I think the opportunities are different now than they were then. We do a bit of contract farming, and I think there's a lot of great opportunities now, share farming, contract farming, and they're slightly different in that you maybe haven't got a tenancy, but they do allow you to get started in your business without the same capital requirement, which has always been the real difficulty for us. So there's a lot of positives to those sort of arrangements as well.
That was
But
one thing I was going to ask that the contract and share concept. Contract, there's maybe not equity based in where share there is. Is that correct?
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. We're here on the Monitor Farm podcast, Andrew. I'm guilty of going and chatting to folk about their history for ages, and I'm like, oh, I've got to actually focus on the right things. But uh, one thing I was going to mention when you were talking about the challenges of renting and getting into tenancies and whatnot now was in another world, I run my own podcast and I've interviewed over 400 people and I've basically chucked all of that data into AI over the past few months. And number one, absolute number one, is that access to land, be that through ownership, tenancy, rental. And I don't know. I don't know what the solution is. I really don't. And we do hear this, there's going to be access to land coming soon because of that increased age, as you say. But it's a challenge. It's a real challenge. But with a focus on the Monitor Farm program itself, Andrew, we'll focus first off on you as a monitor farmer back in 2017. What was the initial inspiration? What caused you to get involved?
I'll be quite honest with you. I hadn't thought much about it, and Riddy and Jones was one of the facilitators for our monitor farm, and I'd never met him in my life, and he arrived one day in the yard, and he got out the car with a clipboard, and I thought it was the department coming to do an inspection, so I tried to hide, but I wasn't quite quick enough, and then he sort of introduced himself and said, "Oh, we're looking for people to apply. Would you be interested?" And at this stage, we were sort of 5 years into our business, 4 or 5 years, really under the pump. We were pushing on hard, but I was working away from home full time. Aileen was working, teaching still. We had young kids. It was just carnage, and we were trying to grow the business as quick as we could, which was good. However, it was putting everything under a lot of pressure. So I initially said, "Yeah, there's no chance. I'm not interested in that at all." Then had a bit of a think about it and a chat to him, and it turned out when we had a think about it, we were 5 years in, and our sole focus had been grow the business, grow the stock numbers as quick as we could, and we'd achieved that. We were pleased because we had grown quite significantly, but everything was a bit of a shambles. We'd grown quickly, but we hadn't grown enough for me to be at home, trying to deal with all this. I was still working away from home full time. We're trying to do it at nights and weekends, and so we'd grown quick, but we weren't doing anything well. So when we thought about it, we thought, this actually is a good opportunity. So it was actually, so it turns out it was perfect timing for us because it allowed us to take stock of where we were. Ridian and Judith were our facilitators. They, took a real good look at our business, where we were at that point, started to look at where we wanted to go, and it allowed us to get a good grasp of where we were, but also where we wanted to go and how would we achieve it. So it came at a really good time in the end.
Shout out, Ridian's a great guy. Love Ridian's fantastic.
Yeah, I know, he's first class.
He has that. Take us back to that decision, Andrew. 'Cause I mean, that's quite something. You've got between yourself and Aileen 80 hours essentially off the farm every week. You're also parenthood is there. There's everything happening. How are you able to take in something like this? It's a big undertaking. It's I've not spoke to anyone that's done it that said it's been a waste of time or it's been a negative thing, but it's still a big undertaking. You've got to do a lot of change to the business. You've got to look at it in more scrutiny. You've also got to open up to everyone else. What did that discussion look like, and then how did it change over the next 3 years?
I'll be quite honest with you. The same way as a lot of our decisions are made, gut feeling, this sounds like quite a good idea. Right, let's go for it. We'll make it work. And that's how we've done a lot of things over the years. We're sort of, a lot of the things we've done, if you looked at it on paper, us starting from scratch, building the business we have, and if you looked at it on paper, you wouldn't do it. If return the effort and the hours we've put in and all these things, and there's so many things you just wouldn't do them if you were too sort of risk averse and sensible, and but as a lot of things, we had a look and thought, this will be good. I'm not sure how we're going to do it, but we know this will help us, so let's crack on. So that was about as scientific as it got.
And tell us about that 3 year period. What you've mentioned, some of the things that came in during it. Andrew, tell us. There might be some people that are interested in being a monitor farmer if they're listening to this. What was that 3 year period like? What were the big changes? What were the challenges, I guess, as well?
It was a great experience for us. I spoke to a few people before we started, previous monitor farmers that had done it, and took a bit of advice and drew from their experiences, and we just decided, look, we're going to throw ourselves into it, say yes to whatever comes along, and just make the most of it. We were very lucky in that we had a great group, community group, or whatever you'd like to call it. So the meetings were really well supported. We got great turnouts at all the meetings. We had a real good management group. So the support we had was tremendous. A lot of people made a lot of effort, not just to attend, but to get involved and help us, with the whole thing. So we were really lucky, and that was key to the whole thing. We were also at a stage where, we're lucky. It's only Aileen and I in our business, so there's nobody saying, "Oh, you can't do that." "Oh, we've tried that before, it didn't work." "Oh, you're no changing breed of this." There's none of that. We could just, if we thought it was the right decision, we go for it. And I've made a lot of mistakes, but we're going with that attitude over the years. But you learn from them, and it's my own mistakes, so it's slightly different. So we were quite fortunate in that way that we had quite a vision of what we wanted to do. We'd been a low input business from the start, partly because it interests me, and partly because we never had any money, so we couldn't buy anything anyway. So we sort of built a fairly lean system anyway. And I didn't want to veer too far away from that, but we wanted to grow our assets, build our stock numbers, have systems that were maybe a wee bit more resilient. And we'd done very little grass and soil wise. We'd been investing everything in growing stock numbers, so we hadn't really we'd started a little bit of reseeding, but we hadn't really got going with that sort of stuff. So that was a big focus to try and improve that.
I remember I said to you off camera, I'd been to your farm as a student with, I was going to say much less facial hair, but the truth is I probably didn't have that, but I was certainly a hell of a lot younger. But I remember a big focus was data, and you mentioned there when you were looking at when we were sort of covering what the farm had on it, Andrew, you spoke about Aberfield. Transition towards these sort of more data driven, more focus on EBVs depending on what breed species we're talking. What was that like at first? It's sort of, you're going from focusing on an animal from a phenotypical perspective, looking at them, that sort of stockspersonship, if you will, and then integrating that data. What's that like? Is that a challenge? Is that quite easy to embrace? Is that how yourself and Aileen's brains work? And was that an easy process?
I think again for us, because we weren't in a particularly settled system already when we started. Things had been constantly evolving. I like data. I'm quite, I love a spreadsheet and numbers. So for me, I quite liked it. It does add a bit of extra pressure on because it all takes time. We did various trials and collected a lot of data throughout the Monitor Farm and learnt a lot from it. And I think it helped steer the way we went with decisions on genetics after that, because we started bringing in performance recorded tups, composite breeds, various different things. It was really good to be able to quantify how they were doing at the start, and that allowed us to then steer what way we've bred. Our breeding decisions have been since then. I don't collect as much data now, but part of that is because we did the hard yards at the start and we bred the type of sheep, especially with sheep, we bred the type we needed, which has allowed us now to have quite an easily managed sheep flock. And we've reduced the numbers a wee bit over the last few years, so we've culled hard, which has again helped. So we still gather some data, but it's more negative record than what we do now. So we make sure we pull the problems out rather than worrying too much about the other end of it. But no, it made a big difference to us, and I suppose it was quite good as well because there was a lot of people coming to the meetings that were interested to see how we were getting on, because that's your responsibility as a monitor farmer. It's not only, I felt when we were doing it, it wasn't just for me to do what I think's right for us. It was for us to try things that other people are interested in as well in our area, and working in a similar environment, similar land types to what we were doing. It wasn't just all about us. You had to, I was quite open to trying things that I knew. I maybe thought, I don't really think that's maybe going to be for us long term, but you can see the value and the merit in trying different things that was going to appeal to the rest of the group.
Was there any examples of things that came forward very much not for yourself and Aileen, for someone else in the group or the larger picture in general, that had that
Yeah,
sort of response but worked out?
it probably was. At the time when we first started the Monitor Farm, we were still lambing some ewes inside. I think so. We did a few trials on creep feeding, which was really interesting. Wasn't something I'd been doing a lot of, again because I was too tight to be feeding too much. But it was good. So it was probably one we did, and we used it as a bit of a trial. So we measured. We did a bit on weight gains on a couple of different protein levels of creep feed and that type of thing, and we did full gross margins on the indoor lamb flock against the outdoor lamb flock, and that was the last year we lambed anything inside. We made the decision after doing all that work that we were just going to go for a fully April lambing outdoor flock. So it was interesting as well. To be fair,
Did you ever miss the indoor?
Not really. If I say I do, it's probably just nostalgia. The old buzz of the lambing shed thing. But the last year we did it, we started lambing the end of February and finished the middle of May. We did an indoor flock, an outdoor, and then hogs at the end. And I would have sold every sheep in the place at the end of that. It was too much, and just ourselves, we never did any labour. So yeah, but we were younger and more enthusiastic then, and there was a reason for doing it. For cash flow, we were needing some earlier lambs to sell. And so it served a purpose at the time, but no, I don't think I would go back to it, to be fair.
Aye, the thought of two and maybe a third cycle is a bit nicer. I mean, you're almost talking in quarters there, aren't you?
Aye, oh, it was tough going.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You mentioned sort of maybe hadn't focused too much on the sort of grazing and grassland side of things, Andrew. What were the changes that came on that side of things?
Yeah, so as I say, we'd done a little bit of reseeding, but we were just scratching the surface. So we soil sampled the whole farm and set about a programme of liming to bring the pHs up to try and get everything up. Well, all the sort of better land, get it up to a pH of 6. We're now targeting 6.5, and we're nearly there on a lot of the better ground now. And we also set about a reseeding programme, which started us into growing forage crops as well. So we hadn't grown any forage crops prior to the Monitor Farm. So we started a programme where we'd put a forage crop in and then reseed the following year. And that gave us extra sheep wintering. So we did that, and then we started looking at rotational grazing. Ridian was a real help with that. He'd done quite a bit of work on that. So we started buying reelers and electric fences and started rotational grazing, and also a bit of deferred grazing, and we tried various different wintering methods. So deferred grass, forage crops, bale grazing, these type of things. So and it set about a real big change. It allowed us to grow a lot more grass. No more fertilizer. Also allowed us to get a lot more stock through the winter on forage alone, which was a big help. So it's something we're still doing today. We don't rotationally graze sheep quite as much as we used to. They're sort of running bigger mobs on slightly bigger paddocks now than they were, and we don't graze sheep on forage crops anymore because we've kind of altered the balance. We've got more cows now, so the cows go in the forage crops and sheep tend to stay on grass and a bit of silage to see them through the end of the winter.
That's actually a question. I don't know if I asked what numbers of sheep and cattle do you have?
So at Clonhie we've about 650 breeding ewes, 150 suckler cows, and about 120 dairy beef stores.
I may have asked, but I don't think I did. With sort of looking back now, Andrew, you finished that. What was that? We said almost 6 years ago. Yeah, geez, well. You said you maybe don't sort of take just as much data, record as much as you do. Are you still focusing on each enterprise individually with a lot more scrutiny than you would pre-2017?
Very much so, and we still do. There's a lot of data we still do record. Sort of weights with cows, especially. We'd always weighed our cows at weaning and pre-calving when they were getting their vaccinations, but we now weigh. We also condition score at the same time as we weigh them. And this year I've started frame scoring them, which is just something I've done for my own sort of interest. And there was a lot of talk on cow weights at the time when we were going through the Monitor Farm, and I've found over the years that I'm not quite so focused on weight in isolation now. We tie it in with condition score, and I'm also, as I say, I now put a frame score on them as well. So we're trying to breed the type of cow we're trying to breed's maybe slightly different. I'm quite happy for us to be a little bit heavier as long as she can carry condition and she's not too big a frame. So yeah, we're also looking a lot of do a lot of weight gains on all the store cattle. They're still paddock grazed on. Most of them are on 3-day shifts in paddocks. So yeah, still do a fair bit of data, but I think it's more targeted, because what I found was it's time consuming collecting data, and that's absolutely fine as long as you use it. But I would be really guilty of collecting loads of data, never getting the time to do anything with it. And so now there's certain things I know that I get I get value out of, and I get return out of recording that, and it's helping our breeding decisions going forward. So we do a fair bit of that, and we do a fair bit with the financials. So we would do forward cash flow budgets quite a lot, and we also look at our gross margins once a year for each individual enterprise, and we split it out quite accurately across the business so that we know how each individual enterprise is performing all the time, and that's really useful when you're trying to decide what you're doing going forward. It's only one tool in the box, because gross margin's definitely not the be all and end all, but it's really handy to know.
It gives you the what would you say? Not the baseline, but the surface information, doesn't it?
Mm.
Yeah. One thing I'm not up on, really, what's a frame score involved?
Well, I don't really know what anyone else does, but I just decided myself I was gonna put a frame score against my cows, because obviously I do the condition score myself. You need the same person doing it all the time.
Absolutely.
And I decided this year I would put a frame score on her, just same as I do condition score, 1 to 5, but just on, if she's a real short fat thing, she's at the lower end. If she's a great big framey cow, she's at the higher end, and it's really just something for my own interest. I don't know if anyone. It's just something I've added this year because I'm trying to gather a bit more information about my cows. We've increased the cow numbers a lot recently, so I'm quite conscious. I want a uniform herd going forward, and the frame score probably I'll use as much as anything is when I'm deciding bulling groups and what bulls different cows are going to go to. It's just an added bit of information. Now that we only had a few cows, you know them all in your head, what they look like, but when you start to get up a bit, it's quite handy just to have an extra bit of information there.
It's funny. I wonder if in, I don't know, 50 years' time, Andrew, that the name Marchant is to frame scoring that Richter is to earthquakes.
I wouldn't think so. I wouldn't think so. I've never had an original idea yet. I just copy what everyone else is doing, steal the good ideas from everyone else. So I can't imagine I'll be breaking any ground there. I tell you, one thing I did forget when we were talking about grass and soils and stuff there. One of the real game changers that we came across was red clover. So we did plant a bit of mixed species swards and did a bit of work on them. And with varying degrees of success, some of the mixed species stuff worked well. Others we really struggled to get it to persist. And then we started into some red clover, and it's been fantastic. It's been a real game changer for us. So, just we're cutting, 2 big cuts of silage, sometimes 3 with no nitrogen fertilizer, and then we're fattening lambs on these fields afterwards. So it's something that sort of stemmed from the original stuff we did on mixed species swards and stuff.
I hear some fantastic examples of various swards with different focuses with different species. I'm not the biggest grassland head. I struggle to pick up on how it all works, to be fair. But
we were always a bit scared of red clover, which a lot of people are, because you hear, it causes infertility in ewes, and you can't, be careful having breeding stock on it. But we haven't got a massive area of it. I think we've got 25 acres of it now, but we don't ever need to put breeding stock on that. Those fields are targeted for making high quality, high protein silage and then for finishing lambs. So we've just fitted it into our system, but it's incredible stuff. It's, it would blow your mind. Some of the growth you can get off that stuff's incredible.
Brilliant. With a focus, Andrew, on the management group, we've spoke about you there as a monitor farmer, 2017 to 2020. You're now involved alongside Richard at Burnbackle, and the current monitor farm for Dumfriesshire. First off, how does it differ from 2017 to now? Is it similar? Is it based on the same sort of groundwork? Is there massive changes, or in general, is it relatively similar?
I would say it's fairly similar, to be fair. It's I would say it's fairly similar. Topics and what everyone's interested in move on a little bit. But I'd say the premise of the whole thing's very similar. What's interesting as well is when you get a new monitor farm, you'll get people that will come along who have never been at a meeting before. For whatever reason, they're younger, they're whatever. And then you get people that have been at loads of meetings before and come along. And you tend to find there's something there for everyone. So I think that's one of the real benefits of it. But yeah, I think there's a lot of similarities. It's just the problems and the issues that you focus on maybe change slightly. I think there's been, I suppose, one of the main differences is, we were always cost focused, but, costs have changed quite significantly over the last 2-3 years, fixed costs especially, labour. There's worries about how subsidies are going to look. There's changes looming there. So yeah, things move on and you look at different things, but yeah, I think there's a lot of similarities in the sort of the goal and what everyone's trying to achieve is very similar, I would say.
There's probably an argument to there's not been a 8-year period that's been bigger changing for agriculture, arguably ever since the revolution. Yeah, it's been quite something. How does it change, Andrew? You're there as the monitor farmer. You've got very much the microscope on yourself. How does it feel to be one of the people at the side? I want to say putting the scrutiny on the farmer, because it's not that, because you're all working together, but you're one at the side trying to bring in that information as a big group. How does it differ being the one who's there as the monitor farmer to now being involved in that management group trying to help the monitor farmer?
It's amazing now. Love it. You go and there's no pressure. Great. I absolutely love going to farm meetings now. But at the same time, I've got a different view on them because I understand what it's like to be, the host and it is, I think people, until you've done it, you don't realise that, it puts a lot of pressure on you. You're there hosting, you're opening up your business to everyone, you're under a lot of scrutiny. I'm fairly thick-skinned and it didn't particularly worry me, some of the comments you would get, but there is times it's quite hard going. You get people can be quite it's quite interesting some of the comments people make, and you think yeah, maybe it wouldn't be that if we were coming to visit your farm, but so I've got a different view on it than I maybe had, and I maybe feel when you go to meetings you maybe feel a bit more of a responsibility now to try and be there to help out. Not to help out, but to, if there's questions being asked and scrutiny being put on, you kind of understand it from both sides now. So you feel you also want to help with a bit of the input and the discussion, because these things, they're only good if you get a good discussion going and the host farmer's actually getting some feedback and some questions and some scrutiny. There's nothing worse than going to a meeting and everyone just stands and nods and never really asks you anything, and that's just a waste of time. So you do notice that a lot more now.
I feel like I know the answer to this, but I might not. Do you learn more as the monitor farmer, or being able to go there and not having to implement everything you're learning at home and being able to watch and pick apart the bits that you want?
I think it depends what kind of person you are. So for me, there's a lot of people that would come and pay quite close attention to things you were doing and they would go away and think about it, and they would be very measured and put a lot of thought into it, and might try a wee bit or dip a toe in the water. And what you'd done and what Richard is doing is maybe giving them that extra bit of confidence to say, right, I will try that, I'll do a wee bit of this. But for me, I've always been fairly gung ho. If we get an idea, we just go for it and see what happens, and we'll do our best to make it work. But so I think it does both. I think it's, if you're the right type of, and Richard's very good at this. He's been a fantastic host, because very, very open to ideas people are coming forward with. He's dead keen to try new things, and that's great, because if it allows people that are maybe they've got an idea, they're keen, they think it'll work, but they're not quite ready to make that step. They can bring that idea forward, and quite often there's a chance that it can be tried at the Monitor Farm, and you can be involved with it without actually taking the risk yourself, which is comforting for people.
Yeah, very much so. And I think you spoke about you've got that such range of people. You specifically focused on those that attend meetings and not, but that range will all be in varying sides. You'll have those early adopters, you'll have the people that wait until things are tried and proven, and I think that's why that offers something for everyone, which I think is great. You said earlier, Andrew, when we're focusing on your time as a monitor farmer, that and you mentioned some of a lot of things that you took on board at the farm that are probably still parts of that business now, or certainly were established for a period of time. But you also mentioned about sometimes you were trying something, you're like, oh, maybe isn't the thing we'd be focusing on, but this is sort of bigger than just Clonhie. Is there anything you've taken on at the farm yourself and Aileen as part of the management farm group, as opposed to as part of the monitor farmer yourself?
Oh, so things that Richard's done at Barnbackle. Yeah. So it's been really interesting, because the thing I found really interesting about Barnbackle is it's a real good farm. Like, the quality of land's a lot better than we would have here, and they've got a great steading, really good sheds, real good setup. However, he's incorporated a lot of sort of outwintering forage crops, ways of cutting cost out the system, because it's he's seeing he can incorporate that even into his type of farm, and cut a lot of cost out the system, and bring other benefits. So it's been interesting to see that. I think probably taking a lot out of their cow system. They're very good stock people, real good herd of cows, and they're managing to have really quite low input cows, but they're producing a really high value product. They're selling weaned Charlie calves, at the real top end of the market. So it's been really interesting just to see how you don't have to necessarily have a really low input extensive system or a really high input system. I think there's a lot of hybrids in there that can suit, and everybody's farm's different, and you've got to think about, I suppose I think more now about it's got to be profitable, it's got to make a margin, but how do we want to farm, and how can we alter the systems to allow us to do things the way we want to do it, but still produce a good product at the end of it. I think also recently we've probably been feeding a wee bit harder. We've been pushing our weaned calves a bit harder than we have in the past. A lot of that's economics, because cattle price is good and feed price is relatively low at the moment, so we're trying to capitalise on that a little bit. But also I think it's just trying to make the most of what we're producing, get the absolute most we can for it, and maximise that product.
And just for those listening, Andrew, and if you're listening to this, it would be a good place to go after this episode. We did have Richard on the first series covering all the monitor farmers themselves, but could you just give us a rough sort of background summary of Richard's farm?
Yeah, so he's basically got a dairy farm. He doesn't like to admit it, but I used to be his next door neighbour for a while. So, but no, it's he's got a real good farm in near Dumfries there. He's got the ability to grow a lot of grass, grow some, real high yielding forage crops. So but he's also, as I said, he's maximising what he's got. He's running sort of fairly high stocking rates, but he's sort of limiting. I suppose he's limiting his exposure to having to buy too much in. By the way, he's now paddock grazing and growing forage crops, and he's got a balance of that. Plus, he's got sheds to take the worst of the winter out as well. But he's so I think they're doing a great job there, and they are sort of maximising the output they can get from the farm, but still keeping a real good eye on the cost structure and how they're doing that.
Andrew, throughout the series of these podcasts, we're in series 4 now. We've had sort of the various tech and the projects that have been covered through the programme. We've had sort of looking at how to run a business on, almost forgetting the farm for a minute, how the business runs. We've had the monitor farmers, and now we're sort of looking at these management groups. But I don't think, and I apologise to someone if they are one of the 30 odd that have been on, and I'm wrong in saying this, I think you're the first person who brought on who's involved but has also been in that monitor farm previously. So hindsight is a big thing. If you were to take yourself back 8 years, yourself and Aileen, and look at starting in 2017, what would you have done differently, or would you not?
I probably wouldn't have done anything particularly different. I'm quite pleased with how things have went since then, and the legacy that I left, and how that's allowed us to grow our business. I think, if anything, I was probably running a bit too hard at that point to get the full benefit of being a monitor farmer. I was still working away from home quite a lot. We were still pushing really hard to try and grow the business. So I was maybe, from a personal point of view, I probably should have tried to have freed up a bit more time, just to have been able to take a bit more in and make the best of it a wee bit more, because it was quite stressful. But we put ourselves under that pressure, and that's probably not changed all that much to this day, to be fair, because we're still trying to push on as best we can. But but no, I wouldn't really change it. I thoroughly recommend it, and I have done to a lot of people since, because I think it's a great opportunity. Yes, it is quite a daunting experience, opening the doors, opening the books to everybody just to come in, but it does you the world of good, and it brings about a lot of other opportunities as well.
I always like to sort of draw these episodes to a close, Andrew, with the whole Monitor Farm programme is based on progression, positivity, moving forward and whatnot. Try and look forward. What's next? What's next for Clonhie? What's next for Andrew and Aileen? As you said, barely, ever since you started that 13-year period, you've never sort of had 2 years the same. Is that still the case for 2026, 2027? What's the next 10, 15 years looking like?
We're very positive about agriculture. We're still running with the same ethos we have done for a while now, in that we're effectively a low cost grass based system, trying to produce a good end product. The challenges are the same as they've been. We've got high costs, issues with labour, these type of things. However, we're trying to adapt our systems to deal with that, whether that's genetics or infrastructure. So we're trying our best to adapt to that. But for us, no, still trying to grow. We are maybe trying to simplify things a bit and develop systems that are easier managed. So I suppose that's the focus. But as I say, I think there's a lot of opportunities out there still, and I don't think that'll change. So we're really, just looking to kick on with that. We've altered the balance of our business, I would say, over the years, to try and sort of get the most benefit out of the type of farm we've got. So that's quite a focus at the moment. Slightly more cows, slightly less sheep, but we're quite happy with the direction of travel at the moment.
Any interest from the young marchants coming through?
Seems to be, they both seem to be pretty keen at the moment. Time will tell how that works out, but no, certainly at the moment they're both quite keen, which is nice. Yeah, it'd be nice to think they'd both be keen to be involved in the industry in some way. So that would be good. Yeah.
Excellent, excellent. Well, Andrew, thank you very much for your time. It's been a pleasure.
Great stuff, Noah. Thanks, Wallace. I've enjoyed it.
Oh, I'm glad. I'm glad. Really good to hear the story there. And for those for those of you listening, that's been Andrew Marchant, covering all things not only involved in the Monitor Farm Management Group alongside Burnbackle Farm, but also taken back a few years to when they're involved directly themselves. The last episode we had was with David Whiteford. We're focusing on the Ayrshire management group there. And the next episode, I will be bringing someone on from one of the other management groups around the country. As ever, thank you very much for listening. Today has been Series 4, Episode 4 of Field Talk, the Monitor Farm Scotland podcast, and we shall see you for the next one. See you then.
Thanks for tuning in to the Monitor Farm Scotland podcast. Don't forget to click subscribe wherever you get your podcasts from for more episodes as we continue to dive into the stories from our Monitor farms. If you want to stay updated with our latest news and events, please visit the Monitor Farm Scotland website and follow us on social media for more updates and keep in the know about what our farms are getting up to. Monitor Farm Scotland is funded by Scottish Government and managed by Quality Meat Scotland and AHDB.